sewage and oil, all kinds of
chemicals and dirt and filth. So, but we just had to, we just kept working through it, and we emptied out the pharmacy as best we could. And at a certain point, we recognized we just couldn't go down there with the water rising the way it was.
And you had to move the Pyxis machine, right? The Pyxis is the machine that actually stores all the medications in there.
That's right. And we emptied out what we could, and we just had to secure, because we couldn't move that entire machine up. We just had to move the medications up. And so at that point, we secured and made a makeshift pharmacy close to, I think it was a labor and delivery unit, and we basically used that med room and set up a secondary pharmacy there, which now became our primary pharmacy.
Okay. And by this time, it's what day is it?
This should be day 3.
Day 3, right?
Day 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now going back to the whole martial law that took effect, and that was actually on August 31st. So that's exactly, 3 days, right?
That's right.
28th through 31st. So tell us about what martial law meant in that situation, because I don't think most people have experienced martial law.
So the situation continued to deteriorate, and I remember seeing the Coast Guard helicopters, and I'll definitely get to the martial law, but I just want to give the scene. The water continued to rise, and there were Coast Guard helicopters just hovering in position, trying. I was waiting to see what was going to happen. Are they going to help people? Or are we going to get evacuated? And really, it just stayed in position, and no one was getting evacuated at that point. And I think they recognized, I don't know who they is, whether it's local or federal, but the people of New Orleans couldn't be helped in a timely fashion at that point. And then they had to declare martial law, because whoever was there in the city basically had to fend for themselves. And what I heard was they brought in the National Guard and they brought in the military, and they had assault rifles that they went around and handed it off to the police or the security leads at the facilities, deputized them, gave them weapons, and told them, you are now in charge of this area.
Mm-hmm. And what exactly would they do with those weapons?
They used it to, they were good stewards of it. I felt like, I appreciated the security and what they did there, but they used it to make sure they kept law and order. And at that point, I'm trying to think how to say this, you don't really have rights at that point. Being a U.S. citizen, being in law and order no longer is in place. You are at the mercy. It's really flesh versus flesh. Human, you just have to survive at that point. And you have to be obedient to whoever is deputized and be aware of what you can and can't do. So they would, I would remember there are certain areas that they would stand there, rifles, AKs drawn, or they would tell you can't pass. And so that's what it was like. You just had to be, you had to submit to whoever was in charge.
So, and this is day 3.
This is day 3. Now we're starting to, really get into, end of day 3.
So there's no help coming.
There is,
and it's day 3.
That's right. But, I was very hopeful that help would come. I am, I believe I've seen what the United States has done. I know we are a country of compassion, a country that believes in helping each other, a country with a great culture. And I remember Haiti was hit with a devastating earthquake right before, in that same month. And the United States was able to get a respectable amount of supplies to them within 24 hours. So I remember people at this point, day 3, were really starting to panic and getting emotional. And I would try to keep them calm, telling them, look, we're in a good, we couldn't ask to be in a better state, in a better country, and we will get taken care of. They flew supplies to Haiti within 24 hours, and that's all the way, that far away. Can you imagine what they will do for us?
Right.
But I remember at the same time, after telling these folks this, I walked outside into the parking garage, because at this point, you're in August in New Orleans. There's, at this point, there is, and I would say, Gopin, at day 3, there was a point where the electricity, the generator stopped working. Once the water started rising, because the generators are on the first floor, the generators just stopped working. I think water got in the fuel, and it just couldn't operate.
Wow. So patients who are on any kind of machines, or I don't know, or any on let's say ventilators or anything that, right? So I don't know what would even happen to those people if there wasn't electricity.
So nurses had to start bagging those patients, and they were just bagging to keep them alive.
Manually bagging them. So they were doing the work of what the ventilator was doing, basically.
That's right.
Wow.
And that's right. So when you're bagging someone, you have this, balloon in your hand, and you basically attach it to the mouthpiece, and you're manually squeezing that bag to give that person life-saving air that they can't inhale and do on their own.
Wow.
And so at this point, the hospital was dark. It was hot. It was, the walls were starting to feel almost like slime. It's hard to, because of the humidity and
the heat. And you're in sewage water, right? There's sewage water all around.
That's right.
Wow.
The toxic water is just, the heat is just causing that to steam up. And so it just created a really uncomfortable situation inside the hospital.
I can't even imagine what the smells and those kind of things, right? Are you able to kind of even can you just think about it and still smell that in a way?
I can, and I can see those halls. I don't mean to get too graphic, but you can't use the restrooms. They told you not to flush the toilets because they didn't know what would happen. Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine when people were just having to, find ways to use the restroom, and it just became, again, uncomfortable, a bit unsanitary, but focused still on the patients.
Right.
So
so you're not able to take showers, right? Or you're not able to use the toilets. There's no running water.
That's right.
Right. So I can't even imagine what that would, feel like.
And you're right. It's just survival.
Right. At that point. But then you were so focused on helping the patients that you're, not even thinking about yourself at that moment. Right.
That's right. Absolutely. And they would have, I wanted to make sure the pharmacy was set up, and they had, people that worked in the hospital knew the pharmacy was set up, and I knew they were able to function and dispense what they could. So for me, at that point, I started transitioning over to trying to evacuate the patients. And so we were trying to bring the patients out from these uncomfortable, suffocating situations in the hospital out into the parking garage, because there was open air there. It was still protected, and it was much cooler than inside.
So the patients were transported to the parking garage?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's, it's when you say transported, if it was
right,
normal, you would put them in a bed, go in the elevator, and then take them.
Right.
We would have to oftentimes, carry these patients on our back up, out of their hallway, up and down stairwells, and then into the parking garage, and then up and down stairwells there.
Wow.
And we had to do this one by one. Mm-hmm. And so we had a team of about 4 or 5 people that just continued to do that, from as long as we could.
Mm-hmm. And then in the middle of all this, you were actually able to make one phone call, right?
That's right. That's right. When the generator shut off, there was a little bit of reserve power for a moment, and then, everything was dark. But I remember I was helping someone that worked for ITNS, and he was able to take me into a mezzanine floor. It's like a hidden floor that the elevators just pass up. You don't even know it's there. And in that room, they have their own power supplies. If there's power outages, like battery power. Mm-hmm. And I was able to go into that room, and because I helped him transport some other items, he allowed me to make a phone call out. And at that point, I was able to check to make sure my parents were okay. Mm-hmm. And I knew my mom was situated with my dad at West Jefferson Medical Center. And then at that time, I called who is now currently my wife. I just met her a few weeks prior to that in Dallas, and I had her phone number folded in my wallet. I called her and told her I was okay, and I told her I loved her for the first time. Mm-hmm. And then the phone's cut off at that point. That was the last bit of juice electricity that phone system had, and everything went dark.
Wow. Yeah, well, hey, it was meant to be, right?
It was. Yeah. It was.
And then you guys have been married for how long now? Just side note, we have to add that little bit of romantic, feel into it.
That's right. So we've been married for 14 years now.
14 years now. All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
With 2 beautiful kids, too.
That's right. Thank you.
So I remember, as we were talking about this in the past, you had told me that I believe it was on day 4, that there was an active shooter. Tell me what happened surrounding that.
So we were evacuating patients, and somehow someone came across a weapon. I don't know exactly who this person was and how they got the weapon, but he was, again, every day that passes, emotion gets higher, anxiety is getting higher, people are getting paranoid, and for whatever reason, there was someone running around with a weapon, uncontrollable. And so they told us.
This is while martial law is taking place, right?
This is exactly while martial law is taking place.
Okay.
So now then you see the security there that had those weapons running around looking for people, and then the person kind of enters the room on that second floor, and they tell everyone to just line up against the wall and don't move, because if you move, you could be potentially someone get that person's attention and you can get shot.
Right. They might think that you're the active shooter and they'll shoot you.
They can shoot you, exactly. And it could be that person may happen to enter that area at the same time, and you might catch their attention, and that person may shoot you as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I find really interesting is there's so many elements of fear at play here, right? You're fearing the storm, you're fearing the lack of running water, you're fearing patients dying on you, you're fearing for your own life, you're fearing toxic waste, being in toxic waste, right? And then you have, on top of all that, now you have to fear getting shot.
That's right, because you just don't know what the situation is so dynamic and fluid. It's so unpredictable. Anything can happen at any time.
Yeah, and you guys had to actually start, carrying these patients to the top floor for them to be evacuated by the helicopter.
That's right. HCA was able to somehow coordinate where they were able to bring in helicopters, and they didn't have a formal helipad, so they were evacuating patients on the top of the parking garage, which wasn't designed to take helicopters.
And top of the parking garage, describe that to us. Paint a picture for us. How high up is that? How many, steps or, set flight of stairs?
It was probably a 5 or 6 car parking garage, but that is, so it has a good height, but it's also recessed compared to the buildings around them. Oh. So it's not designed for a helicopter to come in between buildings, to drop in and hit the space, fall into space exactly. Because you can hit the buildings around you, you can hit so many different things. Where some of the other hospitals, they have, their helipad on their top floor where it's easier access.
Right, but you still had to, go through the stairwells and carrying patients.
I did. So you're right, to get access to that, it wasn't meant for transportation. Mm-hmm. So once we got to the parking garage, we would then have to, we were having to carry the patients through those stairwells all the way up to the top floor.
And when you say we, how many people are these?
It was about 4 or 5 people that were committed to do this.
Wow. And so these are 4 or 5 people carrying each, patients up these stairs, 6 to the 6th floor, pretty much, right?
That's right.
To the top of, so that they can be evacuated.
That's correct.
Wow. I'm sure, all those patients still remember you guys, right? I mean, how can you forget?
I don't know. Maybe they do. Right? I haven't forgotten them.
Absolutely.
So.
I mean, you basically had a huge hand in saving their life, right?
It was, I just did what I thought was right.
Right. Yeah. So keep in mind, this is what you were there in that hospital for 6 days total?
6 days.
So almost 1 week without running water or, probably a decent meal or a nice, a decent place to sleep or lay your head at night, right? And so all these things are going on. Yeah, I mean, how would you say, how is this this moment in time in history, how has it impacted your life? Like, how has that hurricane and that experience, how would you say that that's impacted you?
I've had the opportunity to see how far things can go when they hit rock bottom. And, I've had to really understand what survival meant and also what a team meant, what we can do in these type of situations when you have a group of people that's willing to pull together for the same mission. And so as I've entered different storms in my life and even in the medical profession, we come across, different